Hi, Misha here. This will just be a quick one. Probably not a aircraft most people have a fascination with, but why not? This is the Percival Proctor, and this model is from Oxford. This is in their 172 line of diecast. Specifically, it's their historical or legends of flight, what I often call the deluxe series for them. Basically what that means is you get rotating propellers, and when it's applicable, you'll get up or down landing gear or ordnance on or off. Although on a plane like this, which has fixed gear, not really an issue. But still, they do some pretty neat British planes in this series that no other 172 scale diecast maker has done that I'm aware of, including the Percival Proctor. These come in a pretty nice box. They have a actually pretty good stand. As you see, they peg in nicely, but they come off very easily. And tend to be of pretty decent quality for the money. This one's pretty well all metal. The wings. Most of the fuselage, although part of the cockpit is plastic where the windows are. Tail. So, the Proctor. If you don't recognize this airplane from World War II, I don't blame you. This was a training and communications craft. Right before World War II kicked off, the RAF decided, the Air Ministry, that it needed a new training plane for wireless operators, basically radio. They could also double as a communications aircraft or light transport. Early 1939, the favorite for this was the Percival Proctor, which was a militarized version of the Percival Vega Gull. Basically, they just equipped it with a military radio set and a few other small accommodations, like making it possible to have parachutes on board. Really, that's about it. Just other little changes to meet RAF equipment. They ordered 240. And the first prototype flew in October of '39. Keep in mind, again, this was based on an existing plane, so no big deal. It was a 3-seater, about 29 feet long, with a wingspan of just under 40 feet. It was no speed demon. Its cruise speed was about 140 miles per hour with a max speed of around 160 and a maximum altitude of about 14,000 feet. This would go into production. Initially, we would have the Proctor Mark I and then the Mark II and Mark III, all very similar, all 3-seaters. Percival would be the manufacturer till about 1941, and then it would be contracted out to Hills Company, which was actually a woodworking factory, at least before the war. And actually the majority of Proctors will be manufactured by Hills, not Percival. In 1941, the Air Ministry decided it wanted a 4-seat radio trainer and communications aircraft. And initially, Percival responded with what was going to be called I'm blanking. He wanted to say Prentice, but that was actually the later plane. I'm sorry, guys. I am blanking. Anyway, it had a name. It was going to be a different model. But in 1943, this just became the Proctor Mark IV. And it was essentially the same plane, but it held a crew of 4, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, had a slightly longer and deeper fuselage, and they reworked the windows in Perceptor. There we go. Sorry, guys. It was originally going to be the Percival Proctor, but yeah. Anyway, they lengthened the windows a bit, stretched it out to suit the 4 people more comfortably, and it would replace the Mark 1, 2, 3 in production. The earlier Marks would be surplused out a short time after World War II was over. About 225 would be demilitarized, stripping off military hardware, and then sold off on the surplus market in the UK and also Australia. But a bulk of the Mark IVs would continue on in the RAF through the Korean War period, still being used to train people how to work a radio and, light transport. This could be flown with just a single pilot, meaning it could transport up to 3 people. It was a dependable, simple, I would say unremarkable aircraft, but I don't mean that in all a bad way. It was predominantly made of wood, although of course it had metal too. But nevertheless, after the Korean War, by 1955, the remaining Mark IVs that were still in service were also declared surplus and demilitarized. After all was said and done, the planes that were still airworthy were about 60, and these 2 were sold off to civilian owners. There was a Percival Proctor Mark V. About 150 were made after World War II. But this was strictly a civilian airplane, not a military. And Oxford does do a version of it in this same series, but I wanted the military, so I got the Mark IV here. Kind of a lesser known trainer, but I don't know. I find the design neat. Just a single engine, uses a gypsy engine. Fixed wheel monoplane. Picked it up. One reason I wanted to do this video was to give credit where credit was due with Aikens airplanes. This is actually my second model. My first one came in a few weeks ago, and it just seemed like one of those kind of defective from the factory ones. The left landing gear was loose in the box. It wasn't broken off. It looks like it just was never glued properly. And so I could plug it in, although it was wiggly. The right landing gear was in the plane, but loose. Ditto for the pitot tube. It was in the wing, but it had some wiggle to it. And it quickly started to rotate, and then it fell out. Again, it wasn't broken. The hole was there. It just didn't seem glued in. So it seemed like on that first model from Oxford there, the machine that did the pass for gluing the bits on the underside just didn't have enough glue. Maybe it ran out, or maybe it didn't cure properly. Either way, I tried gluing it myself, but I just wasn't super happy with the results. So I called up Aikens and said, look, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but this is what's going on. I tried fixing it, and I'm just not real happy. If you could help, great. If not, I won't hold it against you. And they said, no problem. Since these aren't super expensive planes, $45. They asked if I'd be ordering again in the future, and I said, of course. And they said, would you mind, instead of us, spending the money to ship you out a replacement, on your next order, we'll just throw a replacement on, and you can just keep the defective one, because again, it wasn't really worth the return shipping. So in a couple of weeks, I ordered again, and sure enough, they threw me a replacement on that order, free of charge. Came in, and it's great. There's no issues with it. I've noticed the windows fit a little better. The hull, all the 3 bits on the underside of the wing all fit nice and secure. Yeah, the propeller rotates smoothly. I notice on sometimes these Oxfords, the propellers are a little rough. But, this isn't a Corgi, so expect what you get. So I have to give credit to their excellent customer service there, especially when they didn't have to help at all. And I have to give credit to Oxford with this model for what it is. It's a neat model of a rarer RAF training and communications plane, and really fits in well with some of my other, like the Anson or the Airspeed Oxford. And as I've said, I actually like the stands these come with quite a bit, because they sit on very securely, and they also sit in kind of a banked position. So that makes displaying them next to each other a lot easier. You can fit more on a shelf. I mean, if this was priced like a Hobbymaster, I would not be happy. But for the price of these, I think they're pretty good little value. These were never armed, by the way. They were always just transport. They did think about fitting these out as kind of an emergency light bomber in 1940, but then the need kind of went away as the war turned in favor of the Allies, so that never was pursued. So unlike other planes, like the Airspeed Oxford, or even the Tiger Moth, which was armed up, the Proctor was a peaceful lad. Anyway, figured why not do a little video, since you just don't see much about Oxford on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed it, even though it's a bit obscure. Appreciate you tuning in, and if you could, check out some of my other videos. As always, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch ya very soon next time.